The winter wind cut through Maria's thin jacket like broken glass. She pulled the worn fabric closer to her body, but it did nothing to stop the cold that had settled deep in her bones 5 days ago. 5 days since she had tasted anything more than the bitter water from the public fountain near the train station. Her stomach had stopped growling 2 days ago. Now it just felt empty, like a hollow cave inside her chest. She sat on the concrete steps of the abandoned warehouse, watching people hurry past on the busy street. Everyone had somewhere to go. Everyone had someone waiting for them at home. Maria pressed her back against the cold metal door behind her. The city moved around her like a river, flowing fast and leaving her behind on the shore. She was 23 years old, but felt like she had lived 100 years in the past few months. It had started when the factory closed down. 200 workers lost their jobs in one day, including Maria. She had worked there for 3 years, saving every penny she could. But the small apartment she shared with 2 other girls became too expensive when her paycheck stopped coming. The other girls found new places to live with family or friends. Maria had neither. She had tried everything, applied for jobs at every store, restaurant, and office building in the city. Some managers looked at her with pity. Others barely looked at her at all. Without a permanent address, without clean clothes for interviews, without money for bus fare to get to job interviews, each day became harder than the last. The shelter had a waiting list. The food bank was only open 2 days a week, and Maria had missed the last distribution because she was at a job interview that led nowhere. Her phone had been disconnected 3 weeks ago. Her last $20 had gone to a cheap motel room where she had stayed for 2 nights before the money ran out. Now she sat on these steps, watching the sun get lower in the sky. In a few hours, it would be dark again. The city changed at night. It became colder, more dangerous. She would have to find somewhere else to sleep, somewhere the police wouldn't find her. A woman walked by, pushing a baby stroller. The baby was eating crackers, dropping little pieces on the sidewalk. Maria watched those crumbs fall and felt her mouth water. When had she become the kind of person who thought about eating crumbs from the ground? She closed her eyes and tried to remember her mother's kitchen. The small apartment in Mexico where she had grown up. The smell of beans cooking on the stove, fresh tortillas warming on the griddle, her mother humming old songs while she cooked. That was before the gangs came to their neighborhood, before her mother sent her north to stay safe, before everything fell apart. A shadow fell across her face. Maria opened her eyes and saw a man standing in front of her. He was probably in his 30s, with dark hair and kind eyes. He wore clean jeans and a thick jacket that looked warm. In his hands, he carried 2 paper bags from the bakery down the street. "Excuse me," he said softly. His voice had a slight accent, but Maria couldn't place it. "Are you hungry?" Maria looked up at him. People had walked past her all day without seeing her, but this man had stopped. He had noticed her. She wanted to say no. She wanted to have pride, to pretend she was just sitting here by choice, waiting for someone to pick her up. But she was too tired to lie. "We haven't had food for 5 sunsets," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The words came out before she could stop them. "We." She still thought about herself as part of a family, even though she was completely alone. The man's face changed. His eyebrows came together, and she saw something that looked like pain in his eyes. Without saying anything, he sat down next to her on the cold steps. He opened one of the paper bags and pulled out a piece of bread. It was still warm. Steam rose from it in the cold air. "Here," he said, holding it out to her. "Please." Maria stared at the bread. It was golden brown, crusty on the outside, but soft inside. She could smell it. Her hands shook as she reached for it. The bread was warm in her palms. She brought it close to her face and breathed in the smell. Then, trying to remember her manners, trying to eat slowly, she took a small bite. The taste exploded in her mouth. It was the most delicious thing she had ever eaten. sweet and salty and perfect. She closed her eyes and felt tears start to fall down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. She wanted to eat the whole piece in one bite, but forced herself to take it slowly. She didn't want this man to think she was an animal. "My name is David," he said. "What's yours?" "Maria." She took another careful bite. "This is very good." "My grandmother's recipe," David said. He opened the second bag and pulled out another piece of bread, along with a small container. "This is honey butter from my friend's farm outside the city." He opened the container and spread the honey butter on her bread. The sweetness made Maria close her eyes again. She had forgotten that food could taste like this. "When did you last eat?" David asked gently. Maria thought about lying, making it sound better than it was, but the kindness in his voice made her want to tell the truth. "Monday," she said. "A woman at the bus stop gave me half her sandwich." David was quiet for a moment. "Today is Saturday." Maria nodded. She had been counting the days by watching the sun rise and set. 5 sunrises without food, 5 nights of sleeping in doorways and under bridges. "Where are you staying?" David asked. "Different places," Maria said. She didn't want to admit she had nowhere to go. David seemed to understand anyway. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet. Maria tensed up, expecting him to give her a few dollars and leave. That's what most people did when they felt sorry for homeless people. A few coins to make themselves feel better. Instead, David pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back of it. "I own a small restaurant," he said. "We always need help in the kitchen, washing dishes, helping with prep work. It's not easy work, but it's honest work." He handed her the card. On the front, it said David's Kitchen with an address she didn't recognize. On the back, he had written his phone number. "I can't pay much to start," he continued, "but I can pay you at the end of each day, in cash. And there's always food. Good food." Maria looked at the card, then back at David. "Why are you helping me?" David smiled, but it was a sad smile. "I came here from Lebanon 15 years ago. I didn't speak good English. I had no money, no friends, no family. I slept in my car for 2 months. He pointed to the bakery down the street. "The old man who used to own that bakery gave me a job sweeping floors. He didn't ask for papers or references. He just saw that I was hungry and wanted to work." "What happened to him?" "He retired 5 years ago. Sold the bakery to his nephew." David's smile became warmer. "But first, he taught me how to cook, how to run a business, how to treat people with respect." Maria finished the bread and licked the honey butter from her fingers. Her stomach felt better than it had in days. "I don't have clean clothes for work," she said quietly. "We can figure that out," David said. "First, you need a good meal and a safe place to sleep." He stood up and offered her his hand. "My restaurant is about 6 blocks from here. Are you strong enough to walk?" Maria looked at his hand. It was clean, with small burns and cuts from working in a kitchen. A hand that worked hard every day. She took his hand and let him help her stand. Her legs felt weak, but the bread had given her some strength. "I should tell you," David said as they started walking. "I'm not doing this because I feel sorry for you. I'm doing this because I need good workers, and something tells me you're going to be a good worker." As they walked, David told her about his restaurant. It wasn't fancy, he said. Just good, simple food. Middle Eastern dishes mixed with American favorites. He had 6 employees, including his cousin Sam, who worked as the head cook. "Most of my workers have been with me for years," David said. "We're like a family. We take care of each other." Maria listened to his voice as they walked. There was something calm about the way he talked, something that made her feel like maybe things could get better. They passed the bakery where he had bought the bread. Through the window, Maria could see families sitting at small tables, eating dinner together. Children laughed while their parents talked. It looked warm and safe inside. Do you have family? David asked. My mother is in Mexico, Maria said. I haven't talked to her in 3 months. My phone... She touched her pocket where her dead phone used to be. We'll figure that out too, David said simply. They turned a corner, and Maria saw a small restaurant with David's kitchen painted on the window. Warm light spilled out onto the sidewalk. Through the glass, she could see people eating, talking, enjoying their meals. David unlocked the front door and held it open for her. The smell hit her immediately, garlic and herbs and something cooking that made her mouth water all over again. Sam, David called out. I brought someone I want you to meet. A woman came out from the kitchen. She was probably 40 years old, with graying hair pulled back in a ponytail and a white apron around her waist. When she saw Maria, her face became concerned. This is Maria, David said. She's going to help us in the kitchen. Sam looked Maria up and down, taking in her thin frame and dirty clothes. But instead of judgment, Maria saw understanding in her eyes. When did you eat last, honey? Sam asked. David gave me bread, Maria said quietly. Real food, Sam said firmly. When did you have a real meal? Maria couldn't remember. Sam disappeared into the kitchen and came back a few minutes later with a plate piled high with food. Rice with vegetables, grilled chicken, fresh bread, and a small salad. Sit, she said, pointing to a table near the window. Eat slowly. Your stomach isn't used to this much food. Maria sat down and stared at the plate. It was more food than she had seen in weeks. Beautiful, colorful, steaming hot. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet, Sam said with a smile. Wait until you taste David's cooking tomorrow when he puts you to work. As Maria began to eat, slowly as Sam had instructed, David and Sam talked quietly near the kitchen. She couldn't hear their words, but she could see their gestures. David was explaining something. Sam was nodding and occasionally looking over at Maria with kind eyes. The food was incredible. Each bite seemed to bring strength back to her body. The rice was perfectly seasoned. The chicken was tender and juicy. Even the salad with its simple dressing tasted fresh and clean. Other customers came and went while she ate. Families finishing dinner. A couple sharing dessert. 2 friends catching up over coffee. Everyone seemed relaxed and happy. This was the kind of place where people came not just for food, but for comfort. After what felt like hours, Maria finally finished eating. Her stomach felt full for the first time in days. Her head felt clearer. She could think straight again. David came back to her table. How do you feel? Better, Maria said. Much better. Good. He sat down across from her. Now we need to talk about practical things. Where are you going to sleep tonight? Maria's moment of happiness faded. She had been trying not to think about that. I don't know, she admitted. David was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Rosa, it's David. Yes, I know it's late. I have a favor to ask. He spoke in Arabic for several minutes. Maria couldn't understand the words, but she could tell he was asking for help, explaining a situation, making a request. When he hung up, he turned back to Maria. My friend Rosa runs a small boarding house for women, clean, safe, cheap rooms. She has one available starting tonight. I don't have money for rent, Maria said quietly. I'll advance you the money, David said. You can pay me back from your wages. Maria stared at him. You don't know me. Why are you trusting me with money? David smiled. My grandfather used to say that you can tell everything about a person by how they act when they're desperate. You've been hungry for 5 days, but when I sat next to you with food, you didn't try to take it from me. You waited for me to offer. That tells me you're a good person who just needs a chance. Tears started to fall down Maria's cheeks again. But this time, they weren't tears of desperation. They were tears of relief. Tomorrow morning, come here at 8 o'clock, David continued. Sam will show you how everything works. The job isn't glamorous. You'll wash dishes, clean tables, help prep vegetables, but you'll earn money every day, and you'll never go hungry. He stood up and went to the cash register. He came back with $60 in small bills. "This will cover your room for a week," he said, handing her the money, "and buy you some basic supplies. There's a thrift store 2 blocks from Rosa's that opens early." Maria looked at the money in her hand. Yesterday morning, she would have done anything for $60. Now this stranger was handing it to her like it was nothing. "I'll pay you back," she said firmly. "I know you will," David said. Sam came out from the kitchen, carrying a bag filled with food. "For later," she said. "When you get hungry tonight or tomorrow morning, there's enough for several meals." Maria stood up carefully. Her legs still felt weak, but her body was starting to remember how it felt to have energy. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You thank us by working hard and taking care of yourself," David said, "and by passing it on someday when you meet someone who needs help." He wrote Rosa's address on the back of a napkin and called a taxi. While they waited, Sam cleaned the table and David turned off some of the lights in the restaurant. "What time do you close?" Maria asked. 9 o'clock most nights," David said. 10 on weekends. We're closed Sundays." "How long have you had this place?" 7 years, he said proudly. "Started with just me and Sam working 18-hour days. Now we serve about 200 people a day." The taxi arrived, and David walked Maria outside. Before she got in the car, he handed her his business card again. "My phone number is on there," he said. "If you have any problems tonight, or if Rosa's place doesn't work out, you call me, okay?" Maria nodded and got into the taxi. As it pulled away from the curb, she turned to look back at the restaurant. David stood in front of the window, making sure she got safely on her way. For the first time in months, Maria allowed herself to feel hope. Tomorrow she would have work. Tonight she would have a safe place to sleep. And for the first time since her mother had sent her north to find a better life, she felt like that better life might actually be possible. As the taxi drove through the city streets, Maria held the bag of food Sam had given her and thought about the warm bread David had shared. Such a simple thing, but it had changed everything. She pressed her face to the window and watched the city lights blur past. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, learning to work in a restaurant, proving herself to David and Sam, starting over again from nothing. But tonight, for the first time in 5 sunsets, she would not go to sleep hungry. Maria woke up before her alarm went off. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The bed was soft, the room was warm, and sunlight was coming through clean windows. Then she remembered. Rosa's boarding house, the job at David's kitchen, the chance to start over. She sat up and looked around the small room. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. A single bed with clean sheets, a small desk and chair, a closet where she could hang the few clothes she owned. Most importantly, it was safe. Last night, Rosa had welcomed her like an old friend. The older Lebanese woman had shown her around the house, explained the rules, and given her a key to her own room. "David has never sent me anyone who wasn't trustworthy," Rosa had said. "That boy has good judgment about people." Maria got dressed in the cleanest clothes she had. They were wrinkled and worn, but she had washed her face and hands with hot water for the first time in weeks. At the thrift store yesterday evening, she had found a pair of black pants and a white shirt that would work for restaurant work. They weren't perfect, but they were clean. She ate some of the food Sam had packed for her. Cold rice and vegetables never tasted so good. As she ate, she thought about what lay ahead. She had worked in restaurants before back in Mexico, but that was years ago, and everything here was different. At 7:30, she walked the 6 blocks to David's kitchen. The morning air was cold, but she didn't mind. She had slept in a real bed. She had food in her stomach. She was walking to a job. When she arrived, she found David already there, unlocking the front door. "Good morning, Maria," he said with a smile. How did you sleep?" "Very well, thank you," she said. "Rosa was very kind to me." "She's good people," David said, holding the door open for her. "Been in this neighborhood for 20 years. Helps a lot of folks get back on their feet." Inside, the restaurant looked different in the morning light. Chairs were still stacked on tables from the night before. The kitchen was quiet and clean. It smelled like cleaning supplies and fresh coffee. David led her to the back and showed her where to clock in. The time clock was old but well-maintained, and he helped her punch her first card. 7:57, he said, noting the time. "Right on time. I like that." Sam arrived a few minutes later, carrying a large bag of vegetables from the market. She looked surprised to see Maria standing there. "I wasn't sure if you'd come back," Sam admitted. "I said I would," Maria replied quietly. "A lot of people say they will," Sam said, but she was smiling. "I'm glad you're here. We have a busy day ahead." David put on his apron and started preparing for the lunch rush. "Sam will train you today," he told Maria. "She'll start you on dishes and basic prep work. Watch everything, ask questions, and don't be afraid to make mistakes." Sam handed Maria an apron and showed her around the kitchen. It was smaller than it looked from the dining room, but everything was organized perfectly. Each pot, pan, and tool had its place. The refrigerators were labeled and clean. The prep station was set up for efficiency. "First rule," Sam said, "is safety. Hot pans, sharp knives, slippery floors. Always tell people when you're walking behind them with something dangerous. Always clean up spills right away. Always wash your hands." She showed Maria the dishwashing station. Industrial sink, commercial dishwasher, drying racks. It looked overwhelming at first. "Don't worry," Sam said. "You'll get the rhythm quickly. The key is staying ahead of the rush. Pre-rinse everything, load the machine efficiently, and keep the clean dishes moving," David called out from the prep station. "Sam, can you show her how we like the vegetables cut?" For the next 2 hours, Sam taught Maria the basics. How to dice onions properly. How to slice tomatoes without making a mess. How to wash lettuce so it was completely clean but not bruised. Simple tasks, but Maria could see they required skill and attention. "David is very particular about consistency," Sam explained as she demonstrated knife techniques. "Every piece should be the same size. Every plate should look the same. It's not enough for the food to taste good. It has to look professional." Other workers began arriving as the morning progressed. First was Tommy, a quiet young man who worked the prep station. He nodded politely to Maria, but didn't say much. Then came Elena, who would work the front counter during lunch. She was friendly and curious about Maria's background. "You speak Spanish?" Elena asked when she heard Maria's accent. "Yes, it's my first language," Maria replied. "Me too. My family came here from El Salvador when I was little." Elena smiled warmly. "It's nice to have someone to practice with." The last person to arrive was James, who would work the grill with David during lunch. He was older, probably in his 50s, with gray hair and gentle eyes. "New team member?" he asked David, looking at Maria. "This is Maria," David said. "She's going to help Sam with dishes and prep." James walked over and shook Maria's hand. "Welcome to the family," he said simply. As 11 o'clock approached, the pace in the kitchen began to change. Everyone moved faster with more purpose. David started the grill. Sam began heating soups and sauces. Tommy finished cutting vegetables and moved them to the line. "This is where it gets interesting," Sam told Maria. "Lunch rush starts at 11:30 and goes until about 2. We might serve 150 people in those 2.5 hours." "So many?" Maria asked, feeling nervous. "You'll be fine," Sam said. "Just focus on keeping the dishes clean and helping me with prep when you can." At 11:20, David gathered everyone together. "Okay, team," he said. "We've got 3 large catering orders going out today, plus normal lunch service. Maria, this is going to be busy, but don't panic. Sam will guide you through it. He turned to Maria specifically. If you get overwhelmed, just say so. We'll help you. We're all in this together. The first customers arrived at 11:30 exactly, an older couple who seemed to be regulars. David greeted them by name and seated them at their usual table. Within 10 minutes, the restaurant was half full. Orders started coming back to the kitchen. David and James began cooking, calling out to each other in the rhythm Maria had seen in professional kitchens before. 2 gyro plates, 1 with extra sauce. Chicken kebab, rice instead of salad. 3 lentil soups, all with bread. Sam moved between the stove and the prep station, plating food and calling for Maria when she needed help. Maria, I need more chopped parsley. Maria, can you grab me a clean sauté pan? Maria tried to keep up. The dishes came back dirty faster than she could wash them. The dishwasher ran constantly, hot and steamy. Her hands got red from the hot water and soap. But she didn't complain. She worked as fast as she could, learning the system. When she made mistakes, Sam corrected her gently. When she succeeded, Tommy would nod approvingly. Around 12:30, the lunch rush reached its peak. The dining room was completely full with people waiting for tables. The kitchen was controlled chaos. Maria was washing a particularly greasy pan when she heard David call out loudly, "Where's my clean sauté pan? I need it now!" Sam looked around frantically. All the pans were either dirty or still in the dishwasher. "Maria," Sam said urgently, "can you hand wash that medium sauté pan? Fast?" Maria grabbed the pan and scrubbed it as quickly as she could. Hot water, soap, rinse, dry. 30 seconds later, she handed it to Sam, who passed it immediately to David. "Thank you," David said, not looking up from the grill. But Maria could hear relief in his voice. That was when she realized something important. She wasn't just washing dishes. She was part of a team that was feeding people. When she did her job well, everyone else could do their jobs well. The lunch rush finally slowed around 2 o'clock. The last customers finished their meals and left. David turned off the grill and began cleaning it down. Everyone else started their closing tasks. Maria's hands were raw from the hot water, and her feet hurt from standing on the concrete floor. But she felt good. Tired, but proud. "How did that feel?" Sam asked as they worked together to clean the kitchen. "Fast," Maria said honestly. "But good. I like staying busy." "You did well for your first day," Sam said. "You kept up, you didn't panic, and you helped when we needed you. That's all we can ask." David came over as Maria was putting the last clean dishes away. "Sam tells me you did great today," he said. "How do you feel?" "Good," Maria said. "Tired, but good." David reached into his pocket and pulled out $60 in cash. "Your wages for today. We pay at the end of each shift." Maria stared at the money. She had earned this, with her own work, her own effort. "Thank you," she said. "You earned it," David replied. "Tomorrow will be a little busier. Friday is always our biggest day. Think you can handle it?" "Yes," Maria said confidently. As the other workers finished their tasks and began to leave, David asked Maria to stay for a few minutes. "I want to show you something," he said. He led her to a small office behind the kitchen. The walls were covered with photographs. Pictures of David with various people, awards from the Chamber of Commerce, newspaper clippings about the restaurant. "This is my story," he said, pointing to one of the photographs. It showed a much younger David standing in front of a food truck. "I started with that truck 7 years ago, saved every penny for 2 years to buy it." Maria looked at the other pictures. David working alone in the truck. David with Sam, both of them covered in flour. David on the day he opened the restaurant, grinning widely while holding a set of keys. "Why are you showing me this?" Maria asked. "Because I want you to understand something," David said. "Everyone on our team has a story. Sam was a single mother working 3 jobs when I met her. Tommy was homeless for 6 months. Elena dropped out of high school to help support her family. James lost his last job when the factory closed down. He pointed to a picture of the whole team at a Christmas party. We don't just work together, David continued. We help each other build better lives. That's what this place is really about. Maria studied the faces in the photograph. Everyone looked happy, relaxed, like they belonged somewhere. What's my story going to be? She asked quietly. That's up to you, David said, but I have a feeling it's going to be a good one. They walked back through the kitchen together. David showed her how to set the alarm system and lock up properly. Same time tomorrow? He asked as they stood outside the restaurant. Yes, Maria said. I'll be here. As she walked back to Rosa's boarding house, Maria thought about what David had said. Everyone on the team had a story, everyone had struggled, but they had all found a place where they belonged. For the first time since leaving Mexico, Maria began to imagine what her life might look like a year from now. Maybe she would have saved enough money to get her own apartment. Maybe she would have learned enough English to take classes at the community college. Maybe she would have friends who knew her story and accepted her anyway. That evening, she called her mother from the phone in Rosa's kitchen. The conversation was brief but emotional. I found work, Mama, she said in Spanish. Good people who are helping me. Her mother cried on the other end of the line. I've been so worried. I didn't know if you were safe. I'm safe now, Maria said, and I'm going to be okay. After dinner, Maria sat in her room and counted the money David had paid her. $60 for 1 day of work. If she worked 6 days a week, that would be enough to pay Rosa for her room, buy food, and even save a little money. She thought about the warm bread David had given her just yesterday. It seemed like a lifetime ago. One act of kindness had changed the direction of her entire life. Tomorrow she would work faster, learn more, prove herself further. She would show David and Sam and the rest of the team that their faith in her was justified. But tonight, she would sleep peacefully in a safe, warm room. She would dream about tomorrow's possibilities instead of today's fears. Outside her window, the city continued its endless movement. Thousands of people going about their lives, pursuing their dreams, facing their challenges. Maria was just one person among many, but for the first time in months, she felt like she was moving forward instead of just surviving. She fell asleep holding David's business card, the one he had given her when everything seemed hopeless. Tomorrow, she wouldn't need it for hope anymore. Tomorrow, she would go to work as part of a team that had accepted her, challenged her, and given her the chance to build something better. In the morning, she would wake up ready to earn her place in the world again, ready to write the next chapter of her story. 6 months later, Maria stood at the prep station cutting vegetables with confident, quick strokes. Her knife work was as good as Tommy's now, maybe better. She could dice an onion in 30 seconds and slice tomatoes so thin they were almost transparent. The lunch rush no longer felt chaotic to her. She knew the rhythm, understood when to push harder and when to pace herself. When David called out orders, she could predict what dishes would need extra vegetables, what plates Sam would need cleaned first. Maria, David called from the grill. Can you start the rice for the catering order? Already done, she replied, pointing to the large pot steaming on the back burner. And I prepped extra tahini sauce. David smiled. What would we do without you? It was a question he asked often now, but Maria knew it wasn't really a question. Over the past months, she had become essential to the kitchen's operation. Not just as someone who washed dishes and chopped vegetables, but as someone who anticipated problems and solved them before they happened. Her English had improved dramatically. Elena had helped her practice during slow periods, and David had given her books to read at home. Simple stories at first, then newspapers, then cookbooks. She especially loved reading about different cuisines, different techniques, different ways of bringing people together around food. Maria, Sam said, wiping sweat from her forehead. "When you finish the vegetables, can you help me with the soup?" "Which soup?" Maria asked, though she already knew. Friday was always lentil soup day, and Sam always needed help with the final seasoning. "You know which soup," Sam said with a grin. "You probably know my recipes better than I do at this point." It was true. Maria had absorbed everything she could about cooking. She watched David and Sam work, asked questions, practiced techniques at Rosa's house in the evening. Rosa had been happy to let her use the kitchen, especially when Maria cooked for all the residents. The lunch rush was particularly busy that day. A bus full of tourists had stopped at the restaurant, and all the regular customers were there too. Maria moved between dishwashing, food prep, and helping serve dishes. She had become the Swiss Army knife of David's kitchen, capable of filling in wherever she was needed. Around 2 o'clock, as the crowd thinned out, David approached her with a serious expression. "Can I talk to you in the office after we finish cleaning?" Maria felt a flutter of nervousness. Had she done something wrong? Made a mistake she wasn't aware of? "Of course," she said. The afternoon cleaning passed slowly. Maria found herself second-guessing her work, wondering what David wanted to discuss. Had she been too confident? Had she overstepped her role somehow? Finally, the kitchen was clean, and the other workers had gone home. David led Maria to his office and closed the door behind them. "Sit down," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Maria sat down carefully, her hands folded in her lap. David looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. "Relax. You're not in trouble." Relief flooded through her. "What did you want to talk about?" "Your future," David said simply. "You've been here 6 months now. You've learned fast, worked hard, and become part of our family. But I don't think washing dishes and prepping vegetables is where you want to end up." "I'm grateful for this job," Maria said quickly. "I don't want you to think—" "I know you're grateful," David interrupted gently. "But grateful and satisfied are two different things. I see how you watch Sam and me cook. I see you practicing knife skills when you think no one is looking. I see you reading those cookbooks I gave you." Maria felt her cheeks warm. "I just want to learn everything I can." "Exactly," David said. "So here's what I'm thinking. I want to start training you to cook. Real cooking, not just prep work. Sam has been wanting to cut back her hours a little, spend more time with her grandchildren. If you're interested, I'd like to train you to eventually take over some of her responsibilities." Maria stared at him. "You want me to be a cook?" "I want you to be whatever you want to be," David said. "But yes, I think you could be an excellent cook. You have good instincts, steady hands, and you care about the food. Those are the most important qualities." "What would this mean?" Maria asked. "A raise for starters," David said with a smile, "and more responsibility. You'd work more directly with me on menu planning, ordering ingredients, training new employees. Eventually, maybe you'd want to specialize in certain dishes, develop your own recipes." Maria's mind raced. Her own recipes? 6 months ago, she had been eating crumbs off the sidewalk. Now David was talking about her creating new dishes for his restaurant. "I would need to learn so much," she said quietly. "Everyone starts somewhere," David replied. "I started by burning eggs in my father's restaurant in Beirut. Sam started by making sandwiches at a deli. Tommy started by washing dishes, just like you. When would this begin?" "Next Monday, if you're interested. Sam would spend the mornings teaching you sauce work and bread baking. I'd work with you in the afternoons on main dishes and menu planning. You'd still help with prep and cleaning, but cooking would become your primary focus." Maria thought about everything that had happened since that cold evening when she had sat on the warehouse steps. David giving her warm bread, Rosa welcoming her into the boarding house, the team accepting her as one of their own. Each step had led to the next, building toward something she could never have imagined. "Yes," she said. I want to learn to cook. David's smile was brilliant. I hoped you'd say that. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a wrapped package. This is for you. Consider it a promotion gift. Maria unwrapped the package carefully. Inside was a set of professional kitchen knives, each one sharp and perfectly balanced. They were beautiful, with wooden handles worn smooth by use. These were my grandfather's, David said. He used them in his restaurant in Beirut for 30 years. My father used them for 20 years after that. I brought them with me when I came to America. Maria touched one of the knives reverently. I can't take these. They're too important. That's exactly why I want you to have them, David said. My grandfather always said that good tools should be used by someone who respects them, someone who will carry on the tradition of good cooking and good hospitality. Tears started in Maria's eyes. David, I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, he replied. Just promise me you'll take care of them and use them to create something beautiful. Over the next few weeks, Maria's world expanded in ways she had never expected. Sam taught her the secrets of Lebanese bread baking, how to mix the dough until it was exactly the right consistency, how to shape the loaves so they baked evenly. She learned to make hummus from scratch, blending chickpeas and tahini and lemon juice until the texture was perfectly smooth. David taught her about seasoning, about balancing flavors, about the importance of timing. He showed her how to grill meat so it stayed juicy, how to sauté vegetables so they kept their color and texture, how to build complex flavors by layering different spices and herbs. But more than cooking techniques, they taught her about leadership, how to manage stress during busy periods, how to work efficiently without sacrificing quality, how to train and encourage new employees. Cooking is only half of running a restaurant, David explained as they worked side by side preparing the evening specials. The other half is taking care of people, your employees, your customers, your community. Maria thought about this as she practiced new techniques. She thought about how David had taken care of her when she needed help, how Sam had been patient when she made mistakes, how the entire team had made room for her to grow. 3 months into her cooking training, on a particularly busy Saturday night, Sam called in sick with the flu. David looked at Maria with raised eyebrows. Think you're ready to run the kitchen with me tonight? Maria's heart pounded, but she nodded. I think so. It was the most challenging night of her working life. Orders came faster than ever before. The dining room was packed, the catering orders were complex, and everything needed to be perfect. But Maria found herself moving through the kitchen with confidence, anticipating problems and solving them smoothly. When a customer sent back a dish because it was too salty, she quickly prepared a replacement with adjusted seasoning. When they ran low on rice during the dinner rush, she started a new batch without being asked. When Tommy cut his finger and needed first aid, she stepped in to finish his prep work while David bandaged the wound. At the end of the night, as they cleaned the kitchen, David put his hand on her shoulder. I'm proud of you, he said simply. We did it together, Maria replied. No, David said. Tonight you led. I helped, but you were running that kitchen, and you did it beautifully. 6 months later, Maria had her own set of keys to the restaurant. She arrived early each morning to prep for the day and stayed late to experiment with new recipes. David had made her assistant manager with a salary that allowed her to move into a small apartment of her own. The apartment was simple, but it was hers. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen where she could practice cooking, a living room with enough space for a small table and 2 chairs. On the walls, she had hung pictures of her family in Mexico, along with photos from the restaurant. Her knife set sat in a place of honor on the kitchen counter. But the most important change wasn't her job title or her apartment. It was how she saw herself. She was no longer someone who had fallen through the cracks, someone society had forgotten. She was a professional cook, a valued employee, a person with skills and knowledge and something to contribute. One cold evening in December, almost exactly a year after David had first given her bread, Maria was closing the restaurant when she noticed someone sitting on the steps of the abandoned warehouse across the street. A young woman, thin and shivering, wearing clothes that were too light for the weather. Maria finished locking up and walked across the street. "Excuse me," she said gently. "Are you all right?" The woman looked up. She was probably 19 or 20, with dark hair and frightened eyes. "I'm fine," she said quickly. "When did you last eat?" Maria asked. The woman's facade crumbled. "Yesterday morning," she whispered. Maria thought about herself a year ago, sitting in almost exactly the same spot, hungry, scared, ashamed, but too proud to ask for help. "Wait here," she said. She went back to the restaurant and packed a bag with food. Bread, still warm from the oven, soup in a thermos, fresh fruit and cheese. Enough for several meals. When she returned, the woman was still there, as if she was too tired to move. "Here," Maria said, sitting down next to her and offering the bag. "Please." The woman accepted the food and began eating immediately, trying to maintain dignity while satisfying desperate hunger. "My name is Maria," she said. "What's yours?" "Sarah," the woman replied between bites. "Where are you staying tonight, Sarah?" Sarah looked away. "I'll find somewhere." Maria pulled out one of David's business cards and wrote her own phone number on the back. "I work at the restaurant across the street," she said. "We're always looking for good workers. If you're interested in a job, come by tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. Ask for me." Sarah stared at the card. "Why are you helping me?" Maria smiled, remembering asking David the same question. "Because someone helped me when I needed it most, and because everyone deserves a chance to build a better life." The next morning, Sarah was waiting outside the restaurant when Maria arrived. She was clean and dressed in the best clothes she had, ready to work. Maria introduced her to David, who looked at Maria with knowing eyes. "This is Sarah," Maria said. "She's looking for work." "Well," David said with a smile, "we always need help in the kitchen. Maria, why don't you show her around?" As Maria led Sarah through the restaurant, explaining how everything worked, she realized that her own story had come full circle. She was no longer the person receiving help. She was the person giving it. That afternoon, as she taught Sarah the basics of food prep, Maria thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From desperate hunger to professional success, from being alone in the world to being part of a family, from having no future to building something meaningful. It had all started with warm bread and kindness from a stranger. But it had continued because she had been willing to work hard, learn constantly, and trust in the possibility of better days. "How long have you worked here?" Sarah asked as they practiced cutting vegetables. "Almost a year and a half," Maria replied. "It's a good place to work, good people." "How did you start?" Maria paused in her work and looked at Sarah. "I was hungry," she said simply. "David gave me food and a chance to work. Everything else grew from there." She looked around the kitchen where she now felt completely at home. At the prep station where she had first learned to dice onions. At the stove where she now created daily specials. At the dishwashing area where she had started her journey back to hope. "The most important thing to remember," she told Sarah, "is that this is just the beginning. If you work hard and stay open to learning, there's no limit to what you can achieve." As the afternoon wore on, Maria watched Sarah begin to relax, begin to believe that maybe her luck had finally changed. She saw the same transformation in Sarah's eyes that she remembered feeling in her own heart that first day. The shift from desperation to hope, from survival to possibility. That evening, as Maria walked home to her own apartment, she thought about calling her mother to share the good news about Sarah. Her mother would be proud to hear that Maria was now in a position to help someone else. But first, she would stop at the market to buy ingredients for tomorrow's special. She had been experimenting with a new soup recipe, combining Lebanese flavors with Mexican spices. David encouraged her creativity, and the customers seemed to enjoy her innovative dishes. As she selected fresh vegetables at the market, Maria reflected on how completely her life had changed. A year and a half ago, she had been counting sunsets since her last meal. Now she was planning menus and mentoring new employees. The bread David had given her that cold evening had been more than food. It had been an invitation to rejoin the world, to remember that she was worthy of kindness and capable of growth. It had been the beginning of a new story. Now, every time she helped someone new, every time she created a dish that brought joy to customers, every time she solved a problem in the kitchen, she was passing that gift forward. She was proving that David's faith in her had been justified and creating ripples of kindness that would touch lives she might never know about. Walking home through the city streets, Maria felt grateful for every step of her journey. The difficult parts had taught her resilience. The good parts had taught her to appreciate what she had, and all of it together had taught her that no matter how dark things seemed, there was always the possibility of dawn. Tomorrow, she would teach Sarah more techniques. Tomorrow, she would create new dishes. Tomorrow, she would continue building the life she had once thought was impossible. But tonight, she would sleep peacefully in her own bed, in her own home, surrounded by the life she had built through hard work, determination, and the kindness of people who believed in second chances. The warm bread that had saved her life had grown into something beautiful, and there was so much more still to come.